it's your boy Ancient Albatross here behind the scenes as usual, but we have the Cypher Unlimited crew with us here tonight, the usual suspects of Spiggs 18 or Anthony. We have Alphadean or simply Dean. And just as a quick reminder, if you haven't already, be sure to follow us here on Twitch or subscribe to us over on YouTube. It is a great help for our channel and community, and we really appreciate all the support we've gotten so far. Without further ado, Dean, what are we doing here tonight?
Well, we're just picking up where we left off Thursday. You know, we were all into this book. I mean, the Magnus Archives is such a beefy, wonderful thing. We got like really into it and talked for almost 2 hours or something like that. So we're just going to pick it up, finish the book off, you know, finish our walkthrough. So without further ado, Ant, let's jump right back in. Pull us back in.
Yep, like Dean said, just a couple quick things to touch on. We're doing part 2 of our Magnus Archives walkthrough. The first part was long because you put me and Dean together with microphones and cameras, and the rabbit hole will fall down. We will fall down that rabbit hole, so that's what happened. It wasn't a surprise, which is great because we get to talk about all sorts of things. Secondly, it's funny that we're doing this now is because MCG's next backer kit crowdfund project is more Magnus Archives.
3 new books.
Yeah,
3 new books to start.
What's the name of the backer kit again, dude? You know?
Oh, I can't think of it. Hold on, I'll get it. I can't think of it off the top of my head. It's something cool.
I mean, it isn't out yet, but they just did a quick announcement, right?
Yeah.
I can't wait. Okay, I'm sorry.
It is the Tangled Web, or Tangled in the Web. The Magnus Archives RPG Tangled in the Web.
And it's it's going to be 3 additional books so far.
That's basically what they're saying right now. 3 new books. It says 3 forthcoming supplements and more. So.
Oh, that's exciting.
Pretty cool. You know. And one of the cool things about it too is if you sign up right now to be notified, you will be getting a nice Magnus Archives patch, you know, that you can sew onto a jacket or something. It looks pretty cool. At least the mock-up does.
I wrote a chat. Hopefully we'll get more cool extras like a guest for Mr. Spider. I haven't claimed my copy of a guest for Mr. Spider yet. But yeah, that was a hella cool extra that you got on the original backer kit.
Yeah, I didn't redeem mine either.
You guys know my strategy is I always wait till I get, you know, at least 5 or 6 different kings before I redeem. I like to redeem, save on the shipping costs. You're gonna pay $9 regardless, so I might as well ship as much stuff as I possibly can.
Yeah, we do the same thing. I think Al is the king though, because Al did like a $900 worth of stuff.
He did 3 years worth of backer kit one shipment.
Exactly. All right, man. So let's jump back in, man. So we left off on chapter 11, and so where you want to, or you said you want to go back and hit?
No, I misspoke when I was looking. So give me a breakdown of chapter 11. This is essentially the setting, correct?
Yes. Basically, this, you know, it picks up literally where the last episode of the Magnus Archives left off. So for those of you who have not watched the Magnus Archives, well, spoilers. We're not. It's been long enough. It's spoilers, you know. So, basically, the ideology is that, you know, at the end of the Magnus Archives, the fears were set free into the multiverse, and so now, you know, it gives you all the tools to set up your own universe. So, you know, which is hella cool in my opinion, because you could literally do, if you wanted to have multiple fears, if you wanted to just have things based around one single fear, you know, whatever the case may be, it would be really cool and easy to set this up with this chapter the way it breaks everything down.
I like that right from the beginning. I mean, MCG is pretty well versed in breaking down a setting for you, but they give you the general overview of the world and how to shape it and change it. Because I think no one's gonna have the same like view of the world since it's modern day. So they give you some advice like not having how about if COVID never happened? So they give you the general overview of the world based on the show and how to change it yourself. They give you a general overview of how to craft your own institute because I think from what I'm gathering from Facebook and from the server, I think most people are using their normal location and building an institute from scratch. I know there's some people that are just copying the show itself, but most people from our server, I've seen Miami, Texas, Baltimore, like people moving Spain, people moving institutes all around. So they,
and of course,
okay.
mine is right. And of course, for mine is right here in Buffalo.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean that makes the most sense, right? Because you want to touch on landmarks and streets and stuff, and it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to. Yeah, I was thinking to use Zilzati when I said Miami. When you're doing something locally, because you're actually familiar with all the places and the landmarks and stuff, so it makes sense to build it within something you're familiar with.
What it does, in my opinion, what it does for the GM, it allows the GM to like really work within a comfortable zone. And if you're playing with people from your area, then everybody's going to be familiar. When I say, if I say, you're heading down, to the north quarter of Elmwood or whatever, people who live here know what I'm talking about. So it's like really cool, and it's just that much more immersive when you're playing with people who know the area as well. But the other side of the coin is, as a GM, and you're running this for people who don't know your area, again, you can draw them in deeper because you have that intimate relationship with the surroundings. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So
it also breaks down how to build a layout, a physical layout for your institute.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you a plot hooks on how to establish the institute, one in your city and connections to your players. And it gives you, and once again, MCG is also great with this. It just gives you a bunch of like little plot hooks or plot lines to get you started when you're developing out your game. I like resentful or angry at the institute's meddling. Supernatural forces retaliate. This could be an attack on the staff, an attempt to burn down a building, or seeping a mystical curse, or something.
What page are you on, Ant, so I can move it to that page?
I am on. I'm on 184 in the physical book. No, 184 on the PDF. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry. There. All right, we're there. Okay, perfect.
Mm.
But yeah, and like I said, all of those things that you're talking about, those are powerful when it comes to developing a setting and just developing your game. And that's something else that if you know anything about MCG, it's almost encouraged that you develop kind of your own world within the world that they give you, because they give you enough tools that you can develop your own place, and it works out. So I could just see doing games like this with different people. You could, like, if you had agents from New York, say, like you say you did a New York City based one, and and then we got on the game with Zil Zaddy. Well, we're New York agents going to Florida, going to Miami, or you could have Miami agents coming up to Buffalo. That is really cool to me too. I think that really sings to the power of what was developed here, and just what the show evokes.
Yeah, the show itself and the game, for that matter, lends itself well to doing, doing crossover games with different GMs because of what you said. It's very easy to be like, oh, hey, I'm taking my characters from Zelzaddy's game into Dean's game, and I won't miss a beat.
Right. And the only thing that'll be different is the location, which really makes it, which makes it again that it just makes it cool as hell. Al was talking about the NYC archives would be a huge windowless building that's in Tribeca.
Nice.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually working on like fleshing out an idea. I was thinking about Roosevelt Island. You know how it has that little island in
Yeah.
Manhattan and Queens. I was
Yeah.
thinking about making the entire island the institute.
Oh, that could be coolish.
Mm.
That could be cool too, because I mean, first of all, it do have some structures, but
Yeah.
basically everything could be underground. That would be cool. Yeah, that would be cool.
It breaks down exactly what an archivist is. And traditionally on the show, there's only one main archivist, and everyone's either assistant archivist. So it gives you ideas of how to handle that, like making everyone assistant and having an NPC as the head archivist, or coming up with alternatives to that matter.
Or even better, or even like on the show though, you could actually have people in those other positions, because it's not just being assistants. I mean, you had Becerra, who was a cop, who got pulled in. You had different characters. So it just really boils down to how you want to build your your tapestry, if you will, because you can go so many different directions with it.
Yep. You was gonna say something?
This section also gets into the entities and their followers, and I think this is another good section because what it does is it gives you a lot of advice and approach to dealing with the entities themselves and the NPCs that the players will have to deal with as far as the entities are concerned. It's really strong in this department.
It also brings up the reoccurring characters, which the show has a bunch, right? And it has the booklet collector, like the Lightner. Was it Lightner? Right?
Yeah.
Or the artifact dealer. It explains to you how you don't have to use the exact characters from the show, but you could create reoccurring NPCs based on these models.
Yeah, because remember, like the delivery guys.
Yeah.
Those two, they showed up. I think they showed up more than anybody.
Yeah. There's a ton of reoccurring characters.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, and then it goes into, after it talks about the reoccurring characters, it goes into the locations and the architecture of the locations, which, again, if you know your city and you know the history of your city, then you can tie in those little interesting anecdotal things to that history, and make it a part of the actual story that you're telling. Like how they were talking about the architecture of the one character who was creating the ritual sites and all that with his architecture, so on and so forth. So you could tie those things in, like in this area we have underground railroad, different places. You could tie those in and be like, these are actually conduits to maybe the other world or something. You just so many different ways you could do stuff with it. It talks about artifacts, talks about the books. Another cool part about this is that it also does it does a breakdown from seasons 1 to 4.
The artifacts in this section are actually the entity's power, though. It's not an artifact that
right.
It's not a traditional artifact that you would find in normal Cypher system. They do have those artifacts as well, but this is something entirely different.
Yeah.
Mm.
So like I said, this goes in,
Yes.
you know,
Well, before you go to the next one, scroll down to the image. Scroll down a little. I guess it's 188.
you mean this image here?
No. The image of the demon. 188.
You mean 188 in the book or 188 on the
No, I'm sorry.
PDF?
186 on the PDF. Down. Scroll down a little. You keep, yeah, right there. That image is crazy.
Yeah. But that's the kind of stuff that they would evoke in the storytelling. You know what I mean? It looks like he's coming right out of that mirror in the bathroom. It's like,
And it's bleeding through where he's coming out. It's bleeding through the back of the mirror. That is a crazy cool image. I don't know who was the artist behind that one, but it's really nice.
yeah.
They break down the podcast for you. They break down the seasons 1 to 4, 5.
Yeah, they talk about season 5. What the reason why they do 5 as a secondary is, you know, as its own, is because this is the portion where, you know, you have to take from and build for yourself. But they even have a little blurb in here about if you haven't listened to the show, and you know how to do it. You know, they do recommend that you listen to it. I recommend that you listen to it. I mean, but yeah, Robert Smirk was the architect. That's right.
They give you alternative setups, which is always great. I tend to always read the alternative setups for any game system because I tend to not want to follow like whatever game I'm playing verbatim. So this sparks ideas. So I'm always appreciative when not only MCGs does this, but any setting book.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. Because I mean, well, you already know I'm good for taking the basic idea and turn it into something else. So yeah, that is great. You know, and any extra advice you can get on it. What I like too is that they actually have a section here talking about alternate characters using other materials. They talk about cryptids. You know, they got, you know, cryptids and folklore. We got Bloody Mary, the Hat Man, Mothman, you know, that they talk about. You know, then of course, chapter 12 gets into the monsters and the NPCs.
Before we even get started on this is my section that I always devour in any gaming book.
Yeah.
Today, I actually went through this section again. This is really well done. I think this is probably the best bestiary in any MCG setting book, standalone setting book that they've ever produced.
Agreed. I mean, first of all, I like the breakdown of all the entries that'll be on the actual stat block, you know. So, you know, they give you a breakdown, description, related, you know, entity, health, damage inflicted, modifications, combat, so on, et cetera, et cetera. You know, then they give you a whole chart to look at, you know, so you can literally see the levels, which is always handy, you know, so that way you're not searching through the book.
Before you go down there, they break down. These monsters have a slightly different stat block because they all have a stress level associated with it. And if the monster has a red stress level, that means that you take a roll or take that amount of damage according to your stress meter, according to the stress level of the monster. That's probably the only major difference on the stat block as opposed to any other Cypher System stat block, but it's still worth mentioning. And it's so simple that you could basically take any other creature or monster from any other Cypher System product and just assign a stress number to it.
Yeah, and they even have a section that talks about creating your own monsters, or you know, modifying, or however, you know. And another cool, another. I was saying,
hold on a second, Dave. Keswick, I totally agree with you. It did take me a little while getting used to it as well. When I saw the stress level, it took my brain a couple of weeks just to fully grasp it. But I do agree with you. I think the change of pace makes it feel more like a horror game. Totally agree with you on that.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't argue that either. That's a good point. No, what I was gonna say, another cool thing that I like, they literally have all the characters from the podcast listed, and they have the page number that you'll find their stat block on, which I think is pretty cool as well. So, if you had a favorite character that you wanted to, bring into the game or whatever, it's right there,
Nice.
which I think is very, very cool.
This, Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any creatures in this monster list that are reprints. Am I wrong on this? And that would be a first.
No, I don't think there are any reprints because
Go up. You scroll it too far. Go back to the original, the monsters by level. Do you see any reprints?
Nope.
Hey, Chad, if I'm wrong on this, let me know. But I don't. Maybe Vampire Hunter.
The Vampire Hunter might be a reprint, but I think but see what I'm looking at is like everything that's in here. This is all stuff that was in the podcast. So even if it was, even if it is in there, maybe it might be a reprint only in name, because you think about the Vampire Hunters are different. They were different than a typical Vampire Hunter would be in any other game.
So this alone, and I might be just viewing it from a narrow-minded lens, right? But this alone, having all these new monsters with 0 reprints, makes this book worth it to me. I know that sounds kind of dumb, but you know how I feel about my bestiaries. This alone makes it worth. There's 0 reprints.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm noticing though. I don't see Becerra on the list. Got Jurgen Leitner, Jane Prentice, but I don't see Becerra.
Are you talking about the NPCs?
Yeah, I don't see Becerra.
Of course, it gives you the general range of animals that's in most of the books. And once again, they have to put these because this is considered a standalone game. So I know this is from the CSR and many of the other Cypher books, but in all the standalone games, they have to give you this. So like the general type of levels for a mugger, a police officer, a store clerk.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Then we go into the actual characters and creatures. One thing I did notice, Dean, is that the stats are pretty high. The majority of them are either tier 6 to 7, correct?
Yeah, it's a lot of well, if we go back to that page, was it 188? In the PDF, you have where'd it go?
Can't you just type in the page number, dude?
I thought it wasn't 188 though. Maybe it was.
Yeah, it's the majority are between. There's only one tier 1, then it jumps to tier 3. You have 7 tier 3s, then you have 6 tier 4s. You have 10 tier 5s.
And the rest are
6,
sixes.
9, 12 tier 6s, 4 tier 7s, and tier 8s. So the majority of these range between tier 4 and tier 6.
Well, there's quite a few threes.
Yeah, but the majority still runs between tier 4 and tier 6. Which makes sense because you're dealing, even though it's modern characters without powers, it's dealing with the supernatural. So it makes sense that most of these creatures are higher tiered.
Yeah, that they would be tough, for you to deal with.
And I also think the assumption usually is, and I could be wrong because I haven't really had much gameplay in this, but the assumption is that you're gonna have a group of 3 or 4 people combating one of these tier 6 creatures. It's not like you're gonna.
Yeah, that would be how you would do it. I mean, that was the same way it was in the book. But here's the other thing: the other consensus that I'm getting though is that there should be a lot of running away. There should be a lot of trying to escape. And the tension should rise like that. It should be. I think using it in that manner that until players have possibly gotten some touched by an entity or something like that. I don't see too many people trying to face off. This is like Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
There's no hope.
I was thinking that, Cthulhu teaches new players the ability of running away and fighting another day. Because every Cthulhu group that, it's like their first time, they always try to, we're going to fight this, and then it's the shortest session ever.
Yep.
After the second session, you're like, okay, now we gotta run, we gotta hide, we gotta do whatever we can.
I remember my first Cthulhu game was just like that. Me and the group, everybody decided we were gonna fight, and we got TPK.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, what I like too though is that like all the monsters that are here are from the book from the podcast as well.
The anglerfish, which is iconic on the show, is pretty cool. I like that the abilities that you get on all these creatures really, they all have distinct. Maybe because Monte was taking it from the show, right? But they all have distinct abilities that are not. I don't see in any of the other books, which is hella cool.
Yeah.
And a lot of these creatures are not meant for direct combat. Anyway,
now these, I think the way I'm looking at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I see it is that, these are things that you put in front of the players to make them realize, okay, it's time to exit stage left. We need to regroup. We need to go get more information. Because I think that's I think that's like one of the strongest things about it is that of course, you do need to go and do research and if you cultivate that kind of ideology with your players, that hey, first encounters, we don't really do first encounters. We do get the hell out of here and do research, type deal. Look at this picture for the cultist for the lightless flame.
The picture, the artwork in this is ridiculously good.
Yeah, it really is.
I like the Archivist stat block too, and I never viewed the Archivist as a level 7.
But by the end of it, yeah, Jonathan was up there. He was a dude. He was the dude.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh
the
wow.
Artifact dealer.
Look at Death.
Yeah, Death is crazy. You see the B-webbed puppet? This is one of the lower tier.
Oh, the web puppet. I'll go back to it.
Yeah. This is a good entry-level combat for one of your beginner games. Zeal, have you had your first session? And if so, did you use an entry-level creature from the book? I'm just curious. But the artwork on that is really cool.
Yeah, and like I said, I love the grayscales and the single color, the color splashes. I think it's just divine host. The dabbler, that's pretty cool. Look at that one.
Dude, you're going so fast. you got a date or something? You zoom too. I'm still like looking. The bone turner looks really cool.
Yeah, he looks a little bit. He looks frightening.
So, dumb question, because I didn't read this. The stress level is only in the first encounter, right? You take that stress point.
No,
Is every time you interact with this creature?
no. The first time you interact, you're gonna get stressed out. But it really kind of falls on you, depending on the type of character that they're playing, and so on and so forth. I mean, think of it this way: if you had somebody playing Martin versus John, Martin would probably take stress. Martin took stress like every time he encountered anything. So I would really.
Is that the raw though? I think the raw is the first time you encounter it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm.
So then, of course, the book collector. Look at that. That picture's crazy.
Yeah. The book collector is actually an interesting character.
Oh yeah.
Mm. I like all the lower level creatures though.
Well, there's only, believe it or not, there's only 7 level 4s and there's 9 level 3s. So you do got a pretty good mix for your low tier. Low to mid tier. You got a good mix.
The chosen flame. Yeah, this section is just really. I could spend all day just rereading these.
I know, and I mean, and what's crazy too, though. What I've noticed, like the artwork. While we always talk about the artwork, look at like this picture right here, Disciple of the Endless. This picture is so freaking evocative. It pulls you in. You literally get the sense, the depths of the ocean, or falling from a halo jump or something, and there's just nothing there. It's like freaking awesome.
I like the deceitful arc as well. That image of the person cowering over it looks like a lightning strike.
Yeah, well, it's the lightning is coming after him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, which episode was that? Now I can't think of the episode, but I remember the one where the guy was struck by lightning.
Yeah.
The delivery man. There they go.
Yeah. Yeah, this image is cool.
Oh, look at this one. The vast.
Overall, like I said before, this is probably my favorite bestiary portion of any of the setting books so far. And that's saying a lot because I really like I really like Old Gods bestiary section, and I really like Claim the Skies bestiary section. But I think this one beats both of those.
Well, you are a horror guy, so you would say that. But no, this one is just different to me in the sense that it where if you look at Claim the Sky, 99% of that was just supervillains, and other superheroes. This has such a wide variety of things that players are going to interact with. Yeah, they might all be the antagonist or a piece of the antagonist, but the reality is they're just so multifaceted that it makes it really immersive.
Look at the image for Flesh Hive.
Nope. Nope. We don't want to see. Nope. 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 That would just be problematic. That would just be problematic.
It's like worms coming out of. That's crazy. Yeah, overall, man, this is a phenomenal section. Even if you're not running this game, the creatures alone, you could use this for pretty much any horror setting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could use this for Old Gods. You could use this for Stay Alive. You could use these creatures for any game any horror-based game. Period.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, and that's what I mean. The thing with this gives you, and not to say Old Gods didn't, but Old Gods has a more, I don't know, earthy, holistic feel to it, where this literally feels like scary ass Cthulhu, cosmic horror. I mean, come on, look at the Plague Bearer.
Yeah.
That's just, that's just some sick twistedness right there.
Yeah, we could go over every single one of them. There's just too many cool ones.
Exactly, I know.
And the art of this bestiary is top notch. The monster pig is hilarious.
Yeah, the monster pig is pretty funny.
We also too got to mention too. It gives you the related entity at the beginning, so you could cross reference. So like if you're picking an entity in the beginning, then you know what creatures you can use to make it easier for you when you're designing your adventure.
Mm-hmm. And they're vampires. Come on, this vampire. You tell me that is not like messed up, scary, twisted.
What's that show? What's the show that had the vampires like that?
It was Blade 2. It was the second Blade. It was the second. I mean, the third Blade move. Was it the third one?
No, there was also a TV show.
Oh, you're talking about the Strain. You're talking about the Strain.
Yeah, the Strain. Yeah.
Yeah, the Strain had them like that, and so. But remember, they were also like that in one of the Blade movies.
Yeah. The Sandman. The Sandman might be a rehash. Was the Sandman to Stay Alive? I don't think it's static the same way though.
Like at the Weaver.
Yeah. Yeah, the artwork in this is, oh my god. All right, let's move on to the next chapter because we'll be here talking. End of the day, this is, if nothing else, this is the best. It's worth purchasing just for the bestiary.
Next chapter, chapter 13, artifacts and books.
Another fantastic chapter. I was looking at this as well today.
Yeah.
You want to go over some of the books in here?
Yeah, let's talk about. I'm sorry. I have a 1-year-old brat dog that's coming. He needs attention. Ugh. All right. So, So the first thing that they do is they talk about the how the artifacts work in the stat blocks. They talk about destroying artifacts and so on and so forth. They even talk about making your own. But all of these artifacts are things that you saw in the or heard about in the podcast. So, which is kind of cool, you know, the blood money pouch, the boatswain's call, you know, um,
And you get 27, 26 new artifacts,
yep.
which is a really good number. So I'm going to
And
pick an artifact.
you pick one. Tell me what, just pick one and so
Yeah.
I can go, I'll go to it.
Yeah, I'm just going randomly. Trying to see. Coffin of the Buried. I just picked it randomly.
All right. Coffin of the Buried.
Level 7.
Related entity, the Buried. Stress. You get 3 stress upon acquiring this artifact. 1 if attempting to use it against someone. 1 for each hour trapped in the buried. For trapped in the buried, by the way, of the coffin. So, we remember. I mean, you remember that episode? That was
Yeah.
that was a really good episode. You know, and it's a coffin with "Do not open" scratched into the top of it. But you were always hearing. You know, the longer you have it, the more you start hearing the chains rattle and the somebody tapping on the inside and scratching and so on and so forth. And if you open it, you're going to find stairs that lead down, which is like kind of wild. Um, but it gives you all of the stuff, you know, it tells you like each time the coffin is open, someone within the immediate range, usually whoever's nearest to it, must succeed on an intellect defense roll or attempt to descend the stairs. So, you know, stuff like that alone is just gonna
You could like this artifact alone could be 1 or 2 adventures.
oh yeah, it could be the thrust of it could literally be the thrust of your first, you know, 3 or 4 adventures. I mean, you know, your first character arc. I mean, your story arc, not character arc, but your first, you know, your first meta plot. You know, I could see doing that. You know, and that's the thing about it is like, you know, all of these artifacts have that much of a. They give you that much material to work with and play with.
And once again, it ties into the stress theme. All these artifacts have some of them have a stress cause for just acquiring it, and some of them have a stress cause for acquiring it, and a stress cause for using it.
Right.
Mm.
So, you know, this section, you know, is like crazy. And like I said, it has all the major ones that you saw or you heard about. I keep saying saw because in my mind, I saw them, you know. But, you know, then it goes on to the next portion of this chapter. It starts talking about the books and talks about the lighteners. It talks about destroying books. It talks about interaction with the books. And then it gives you a list of books, which is pretty cool. You got what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 18, 20, about 25. Yeah, 25. You got 25 books here, you know, on top of the fact that, you know, which is cool, we're getting, well, those of us who got most of the, you know, all the perks and stuff, you're getting Lightner plates for your books, and you're also getting a guest from Mr. Spider, which is cool as hell. But I could see, you know, putting together using some of those Lightner plates and putting them in some books, you know, or even grabbing some books from Invisible Sun and introducing it into the Magnus Archive. You know, because what is that? The Book of Shadows?
Yeah.
You know, yeah, that would be cool.
And once again, it gives you a level, the related entity, and the stress level from attempting the book, and then a description of the book itself.
Yeah, you know, and that's like that's pretty cool. I mean, I think again, as we're talking about this, and we're talking about, you know, what you have in this book. And it's crazy because we haven't even, scratched the surface of what can be done with the stories in this book. And you got 3 more books coming. You got 3, they got,
Yeah.
next year, early next year, we're going to be doing another Magnus Archive. So for those of you who love Magnus Archives, you're going to have stuff to work with for Magnus Archives for quite some time.
Let's pick a book like we did. I just looked at because this one was just directly in front of me, but Dead Animals, right? It's level 3. Related entity is the flesh. Stress 3. Realizing the book materializes upon realizing the book materializes bone. This is an unremarkable looking book. It's filled with Sanskrit poetry about dead animals. If passed through a shadow before being opened, a handful of slightly warped bones of birds, mice, gophers, frogs, and other small animals patter to the floor. This process can be repeated. After a few repetitions during the encounter, horror mode is immediately triggered. Or if it's already active, the range increases by 1 until the encounter ends. Your fear, a nearby animal a character notices now gone, except for a small pile of fur, feathers, or scales. That's hella cool.
Right. It's really, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Everything that they give you, and it's like, I can see, setting up an entire, session just on the dead animal book.
Yeah.
You could do, it's like really cool. And then of course, another thing, you know, um, that I like about it is that, like you said, the books are leveled. You get that initial what happens the initial encounter with the book, whether it's just acquiring the book or whether it's realizing the book has power or whatever the case may be. It adds that element to the storytelling that I really dig, that I'm really liking about the Magnus Archives as a whole. Let's see.
You read the Joy of Eating book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The security camera instruction manual. And that's what I'm saying. Some of the stuff that they have in here is just you wouldn't even think about it because it seems so mundane. But
I remember that episode, the security camera instruction
yeah,
manual.
me too. I remember that was a great episode.
Yeah.
That's what made me think about it, because it's like, the instruction manual. Wow, but yeah, it puts, I guess, telling your stories in a different perspective. Cypher did that in the first place, but now with this book is just taking us again to another level where we get to see more of the nuances.
You know what I really like, and I think this is more the setting where it's based off of, is that you have so many places to begin your first adventure on. You could base it on entities, you could base it on the books, you could base it on the artifacts, you could base it on an introduction to the Institute itself. There's so many ways you could go to build a story in this setting that it's so rich with narrative that it's very hard to fuck it up, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense, but but you're right. That I think that's one of the things that I really like. It's probably the thing that's the Cypher system thing, because Cypher is so wide open. But I love the fact that these setting books that they give us are wide open as well. They narrow your storytelling. They give you a setting to play in, but that's just it. It's time for you to play. You can build your own sandcastles. So
Yeah, no, I think this setting in particular has more tools than the other one.
oh no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying that's the Cypher thing, and this just right here, this just reiterates it and kind of doubles down on it in the sense that this is a focused setting, a focused storytelling, but how wide open it is for you to do, what it is you want to do. I love it. So chapter 14 gets into running the game, and this section, like most MCG products, you know, some of it is a bit of is a reprint from other books, but they give you the advice that you need to do your job as a GM. And then some of the stuff here is directly related to um this particular book, you know. But it gives great advice. I love this the section that talks about being impartial, being an impartial GM, you know. So, basically again, write the story, write the scenario, and then don't have any stake in it. The only stake you have is presented it to your players so they buy in. And then let your players, take you on the rest of the ride. I think that's one of the best pieces of advice that you could get, especially, when you want to run a narrative game like Cypher.
It also has the rules versus story, which is always a great way of looking at it. The story is more important than the rules.
Right.
And then, of course, it's, the general difficulty task, how to set a difficulty task.
Yeah, rules versus the story. Talk about setting difficulty numbers.
Yeah.
Of course, typical difficult task difficulty table.
Being consistent, correcting your mistakes, routine actions, why you shouldn't roll, alternative rules for rolling, setting difficulties, of course, GM intrusions.
I love this section too on false precision about when you try to set your difficulty numbers, and it talks about, using incremental steps if you have to, just set the difficulty, think about how hard you think something is, and then you set it at that. And then, then you think about hindrances and so on and so forth, and basically how to start mitigating and refereeing those particular situations. I think is really cool.
The GM intrusions section is very interesting because it has two that using GM intrusions as a narrative tool, which I think a lot of GMs should use more often as opposed to just bad things happen when I do a GM intrusion. It's more how do I make the story more interesting, good, bad, or indifferent, and using GM intrusions in horror mode. Because one thing with horror mode is if you're not used to it, you could quickly run out of GM intrusion ideas if you have a bunch of crappy rolling players. So, any advice you could give a new GM or any experienced GM for that matter on how to use GM intrusions in hard mode is great. Really appreciated.
Yeah. In GM intrusions, like we've talked about this in the past. I love using GM intrusions as a narrative tool versus just something bad happens. And I think once your players realize that you're not out to kill them, they'll start embracing the GM intrusions a little more as well.
And they broke down GM intrusions in different types. Like bad luck GM intrusions, an unknown, a complication emerges GM intrusion, fumbles, partial success GM intrusions, opponent luck or skill GM intrusions, which is cool. We're examples of each.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there.
Right, and then they have a player intrusion section. And once again, with these standalone books, I know this is something that our experienced Cypher GM pretty much knows, but they need to put this in these books because not some people are purchasing this book just to play this and never played the Cypher system.
And something else. The reason I think another reason it bears mentioning that it should be in the books is because GM intrusions are such a different mechanic that they do need to be explained. They need to be explained in a lot of entirety. Like you were saying, the fact that they had, different types of intrusions, and so on and so forth. Talk about using the intrusions during horror mode. You know, um, I know one game, just for example, for people out there who may not have done it, but using in horror mode, a lot of times, you know, the world, the environment just becomes problematic when I use horror mode, and that's what a lot of GMIs become. The GMIs become, the environment being your nemesis as much as the, antagonist, stuff like that. But this section of the book talks about doing that sort of thing. Let's see.
Actually, like I want to look at this section because that it actually breaks down stress, suffering stress, and it's like it's stated stress is broadly generalized rule to cover things that wear away on at us both mentally and physically. The reason why I'm going through this section because this is actually kind of new to the Cypher system.
Where are you at?
Page 306 in the PDF. While it's fairly well described in Chapter 7, there are a few additional notes to keep in mind. Most of the time, if someone suffers stress from a horrible experience, it should probably be just 1 or 2 points. It should never be more than 3. A typical person wouldn't go to the hospital due to the injury. It's probably not a serious injury, but instead just a few points of stress. A fight in the alley probably results in stress, not a major injury. Most incidental injuries would just be stress. I want to talk about that. I think that's a good way to cover in the narrative, right? Even if you're not playing Magnus Archives, instituting the stress mechanic as a way of you adding these little narrative scenes where you don't have to take points from the pool, but you feel like a bar fight. Like, say, a bar fight is something that you need in the narrative, but you don't want to waste the time, deducted points from your might pool, from your speed pool. You could just institute stress to handle that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it goes on to talk about a lot of different aspects of stress and so on and so forth. I like this too, the graduated success section, where it talks about, basically stepping away from the normal method that you set difficulties and so on and so forth. So, for example,
what page number is that?
Page 307 in the PDF, so 305 in the book. So what I like about it is, again, and it's stuff that, I like that it's this right here. Basically, let's just say you set a difficulty, like the example they give here. For example, a PC tracking people who broke into a farmhouse looks for tracks in the woods behind the house. Given the terrain and the weather, the GM decides it's a difficulty 4. So the target number is 12. The player rolls a 10. This isn't enough to accomplish the task the PC set out to do, but since they would have succeeded if the difficulty had been 3, the GM decides that the character will learn something. So I like that. Okay, you may not be able to track them anymore, but you know what, the tracks get confusing. You see the tracks and now they're going in circles or something that would lead you to another conclusion. I love that aspect of failure, but not catastrophic failure.
Yeah.
Not oblivion. Again, storytelling.
Even the optional rule right next to it, attacking on the same page, Steve.
Yeah.
Acting while under attack. That's just basically attack of opportunity.
Yep. Yeah.
now they get to ciphers, handling ciphers, handling artifacts.
Yeah.
Encouraging player creativity. You know, one thing Monte always does when he's the lead writer, I feel like his rules layouts are always the crispest. Like I said, he's the original OG when it comes
Yeah.
to this character arcs. I think character arcs in Magnus Archive work extremely well. Like I know you're supposed to use character arcs in every setting, but some settings don't really need it, really. But
Character
Magnus,
arcs. I'll say this about character arcs, and yes, first of all, let me agree with you. In Magnus Archives, absolutely. I think that every player should have a character arc on their sheet, especially if you're going to run a campaign. It has to be done. Overall character arcs. Um, the only time I really don't look at them is if I'm going to do one shots, because it just doesn't lend itself. But I've learned even with like some of the more goofy stuff. Like I mean, I ran the Power Rangers thing, and one of the characters had a character arc in the Power Rangers game with my son that they wanted to find the history of the other Power Rangers, because they were the Crystal Rangers, and they wanted to find out about the Beast Rangers and the all of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of stuff like that. You can just work it in.
yeah, but just to tie it back into Magnus Archives, I think this is a perfect setting to utilize character arcs.
And right after that portion, that's another thing that I like here after they talk about character arcs is ensuring player agency.
Yeah.
That I think that's huge, especially in a narrative game, especially, dealing with Cypher system in general. Player agency has always been, paramount on their list. And I like that there's a whole section here to actually help you, uh, do that. Make sure your players have agency within the game.
Yeah, yeah. Monty is always chock full of, and this running the game section seems a little longer than most
It is.
setting books, but it's chock full of great advice. Handling NPCs, running NPCs, NPC deaths, player deaths, using NPCs as allies.
Yeah. And then back to what we were saying before, all of that. But then, that player agency, they even have a section to tell you, check in with your players, do character summaries, learn how things are going with the players, refresh your memory and theirs. You know, one thing that I like to do when I run a campaign, is I always offer uh, a bonus XP at the beginning of each session for somebody to recap the last session. So everybody's is fresh. Um, and in one game, I actually have a player who like keeps notes. They keep minutes for the game, which is pretty cool. So they got to
Yeah.
want to talk about creating NPC game stats, NPCs in death, creatures, monsters, and inhuman NPCs. So NPC
Yeah,
guide.
it's chock full of great gaming advice.
There's your fleshy. She's really bad. She really bad now. There's a section on interaction, running combat and action sequences.
Oh, this is the
Describe.
question. The question I mean, those are all like the general ones that are in most of the books, Dean. So I don't know if we have to go over every single one of those because a lot of those are in every book. I want to go over like the Magnus Archive specific like rules, like the group crafted statement. This is a question I asked on the CU Discord. Like, how do you handle the group crafted statement? And it basically breaks down to explaining you how to do it. So in this method, the group is sort of playing out the investigating events. It can and should be creepy and unsettling to be part of this process. Even though it's not happening to the characters the players are invested in, it's still spooky to see the events arise out of a joint conversation. No one is crafting this horror, so it's a way. No one person is crafting this horror, so in a way, it might seem like it has a life or existence of its own.
Yeah,
Have you done this, Dean? A group crafted statement?
no, I haven't.
Me either. And I'm really curious to see how this
I
plays
want to
out.
do it. I would like to do it, but again, well, you know what? Maybe me, you, and Al should like
Yeah.
try to do one, and figure something out. Maybe we'll craft a statement and then make that the basis of a one shot. You run a version of it. I'll run a version. Al run a version. But Al probably won't run a version.
Chat, anyone in chat has experience with the group crafted statements, and if so, how did you handle it? I'm still curious. I asked this on the Cypher Unlimited Discord. No one responded to me. So I'm on the assumption I don't think anyone's doing this, if that's true. And I don't know why, because this seems like something that's hella cool.
Well, you know what? Again, you got to remember that it is cool as hell, but we're all just starting to get the book. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, the book's only been in our hands for what, 3 or 4 months?
Oh, look, Monte even touches on this. He says, from statement to play at the table. This is what I'm doing a group crafted statement. I'm sorry. This seems like the most interesting way to me. But he said the biggest obstacle you have in dealing with a group crafted statement is probably time. The group gets together, crafts a statement, then turns to you, expecting the investigation to start. That's a difficult position to be in. Some GMs have a great affinity for improv and come up with a story using a statement as a springboard very quickly. Others might need a half an hour of thinking and prep. Still, others want a week. You should take whatever time you need. There is no right or wrong method. Each, however, has its own considerations. That's why I was thinking, right, that you have a session 0 and every player leads a statement. So then the GM now has 4 statements that the players don't know which statement's going to be the first adventure, the lead in an adventure. But the player, now the GM has 4 like shells of a story that they could build a campaign around. Or
I think that's a great idea. Remember, that's what I was saying. I was saying that last week. I think it's a great idea to do it that way.
I'm also not against improving it though, which Monte up here as well.
I'm not against improving it, but I'm saying, like, the statement portion, I think I would really want to do it, like we said, as a session 0 and get, 3 or 4 statements. And then if I had to improv a statement or something to try to improv, if we did it quickly and everybody still wanted to play something, I could at least come up with an intro to that particular thing with the statement and stuff. But yeah, I get it. Kezarek said he wasn't too interested in the statements, to be honest.
I think that's the like common opinion, to be quite honest. Like I don't know, maybe it's just me, but when I saw the statements on the show were the most interesting thing to me. So I would think of wanting to make the statements fit into your actual game somehow.
Well, you got to remember the statement,
because it's giving agency to the players in the actual story as well, especially if you're allowing the players to build out the statement.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you got to think about it in that respect. Like I said, for me personally, I think building the aesthetics, the world itself, but doing the actual statements in the actual game, I like the fact that the players would be the ones kind of helping me craft it, because now they're invested. it's an investiture of sorts.
President brought a great point. He said, I think a lot of players just want to get into the meat of the game. And maybe that's what why the statement thing isn't which makes a ton of sense, you know?
Yeah.
But once again, this game is so layered that there's two different ways of playing this, and both of them are viable, you know?
Right. You can. It really doesn't matter.
I'm definitely going to try the statement route, though.
Oh, definitely. If I get to run a campaign, definitely get to run a even if I do a one shot, maybe I'll do that with a one shot. Get my basic, get the basic pre-gens done, and I already have the basic outline of the world I want. Maybe I do a session 0. We craft a statement, and then run the game from there. Good idea.
I think most people just design their game because that's what they're used to.
Yep.
And then they want the players into it.
Yep. No, like I said, I'm willing to try something different.
I'm curious to see how a statement comes out, though. Like, is it like For the Queen? You ever play that game, For the Queen, where one person starts building on the story, and then the next person like adds on to it?
Well, I mean, I think
that's how it is.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's the same way, but the way it's described to do it in the book is basically like that. Each person is adding something. The first person, of course, is their statement, and they're going to give you the overall, thrust of it. But then each person after that is adding to it and helping you flesh it out. So yeah, it could be a lot of fun.
Then he goes into prep, little zero prep improv, a lot of prep, running horror, which is always great advice. You know what's funny? Cypher System is now becoming like the go-to horror system. Like handling mature themes, creating tension, raising the stakes.
Well, I mean, you got two pretty adult franchises, if you will, IPs here now.
Oh, this is also great advice. The Magnus Archive podcast leaves a lot of questions unanswered because that's the nature of the show. So Monte explains how that could be a good or a bad thing in an RPG session and how to handle it, which is really cool. Evoking emotion, describing horror. This is just chock full of great advice. This one in the game section is actually really long.
Yeah, it is. And then you got, it talks about being a dynamic GM and, how to get there.
Oh, he breaks down cosmic horror.
I like this statement too. He got being true to the mood of the podcast or to the horror in general supersedes any rule in this book.
Amen to that, brother.
Yeah. In other words, people, anybody out there who's going to ask us, well, what did they mean by this? I don't know. You tell me. They even got a section about preparing for your set, for your session.
And then of course, this is the next game I definitely want to run. This Magnus Archives.
And then there's of course a
sample
of gameplay,
which is always awesome.
Then of course the next couple of chapters are nothing but adventures. Adventure 1, the Resurrection Mound, which is a great adventure.
Was that the one you ran? Was that the one at Game Home?
Yes. Yep. This is the one, and it's a doozy. Adventure 2, I've only got to read the first couple of pages. This one I really want to run. The second adventure is called Liquefy. I want to definitely run this adventure. It has some twists and turns in it. I can see, depending on how
I haven't
with
read or
players.
played this adventure because I wasn't going to game home, unfortunately. So, do you read the statement in the beginning of the game to the group?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
You can, or you're supposed to.
Well, it really depends. It depends on how you want it to set up. You can do the statement at the initial, like with the resurrection mound.
Mm.
Let me go back to it. Okay. So, you know, um, it gives you like the background and the synopsis of what's supposed to be going on, right? Um,
Well,
and
we got to wrap up soon, so make it fast.
okay, no, basically what I was saying though is that with the statement, for this particular adventure, especially at a con, I would say yes, definitely do it. But if you were doing it, as a home game, you could mix it up a little bit. You could have them already being on everything, and then find the statement, you know, and start putting the boxes together. What I do like too here, I don't know if you noticed, but in the book there are QR codes, and it says you can find completed statement form with the following statement at the following link. So that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah, well, it was that like part of the read the statement game starts, but and not the way that adventure was written is they find the statement and then read it.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So you got two complete adventures, which is always good. It gives you a starting point for you to start playing with, and to give you two full adventures is really cool. Usually, a lot of these books will give you one.
And then, of course, at the end, they give you recommended resources for reading books, movies, uh, games, video games, music, audio dramas, internet stuff like SCP archives, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Of course, there's a Magnus Institute, there's a statement form.
Yeah, the
Then,
statement form is cool. The
and then the
character
character
sheet is
sheet,
real cool.
you know, then the character sheet.
Yeah, I really like the character sheet design.
Of course, and then you also have a consent and gaming checklist at the end. And then, of course, the index, and that's the book.
All right, we're being told by our producer Al that we have to wrap it up. That we're going over time, so we're going to speak to Dean. Overall impressions of not only the chapters that we read, but overall impressions of the Magnus Archive RPG role playing game as a whole.
As a whole, I'm gonna give it a 5.9 out of 5.
Uh, Once you pick five, it's usually like 1 to 3 or 10, but okay.
Because I like
Um,
5 stars. You know,
all right. Any reason behind it? What do you think it adds, or just?
the reason why I give it that high of a score overall is because of all the additional tools that this brings to the table that can be used elsewhere. Um, the Magnus Archives itself. I mean, we all fell in love with the podcast. We all were drooling over it. Couldn't wait to get to the end. Um, this is just more of that. So I'm saying, as a whole, all the additional mechanical and GM advice and all of that stuff just makes this book, a magnificent piece to have on your shelf, because a lot of the advice and a lot of the stuff that's in here is applicable to other things. Is applicable to other games. Is applicable. You could take the stress mechanic and use it in your other games. It's just, really good as a whole.
I would give it a. If we're doing your five, since we use it, I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. I think it's the best, for the exception of Numenera, the best standalone setting book that MCG has ever produced. I think that one that it just the fact that it has very little duplicate from any other MCG. Everything's original in this, which can't be said about all the other setting books. Like everything in here is original, from the bestiary to the ciphers to the artifacts. Everything's original in this, which knocks it up a notch for me personally. I think the bestiary is phenomenal. I think the I happen to really like the setting. I happen to really like horror. So out of all the standalone books, I think this is now the gold standard for me. So yeah, you know, if you guys watch our show, you know I rarely rate anything perfect. So 4.5 out of 5 is a great score for me. So yeah, I think this is probably the best standalone book, and I'll highly recommend getting it. Um, like what Dean said, there's so much to use, even if you're not running horror. So much to add to your, normal Numenera, your strange games, or just it's just a great book to have in your Cypher collection. So 4.5 out of 5 for me, and yeah, I would definitely recommend this book.
Definitely recommend it. I would say get it. Spend a couple of weeks just digesting it. I wouldn't even attempt to run anything right away. I would just sit there and read it because it's really a good read as a whole. So
Yeah, go check it out. And we're gonna have more Magnus archives in January? In like 2 months?
Well, they said the first quarter. So
January, February, be on the lookout for another backer kit of the Magnus archives. I'm sure MCG will let us know. It'll definitely be posted on our Discord. Speaking of our Discord, if you like us and you like what we do, join the Cypher Unlimited Discord server for all things Monte Cook games. We have the largest fan-run Discord server for everything MCG. Games being had almost daily. Great conversations. But if Discord's not for you, join our Facebook group. Not as big as our Discord, but still great conversations being had there daily as well. We're still trying to build up both our platforms between Twitch and YouTube. So if you find any kindness in your heart, subscribe here on Twitch, or like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. Any help you can give us in that matter will be greatly appreciated. Our video and content is always free, but if you want to support us financially in any way, give us a little donation on Ko-fi. It helps us out a ton with all the great things we have planned. Or go to our online store and pick up some cool Cypher Unlimited merch, like the shirt Dean got on or the hat I got on. And last but not least, we love you guys.
Yep. Thank you guys so much for talking about the book, Dean and Ant. Definitely an awesome book. Even if you're not a Magnus Archives fan, this is a treasure trove of Cypher System horror stuff that cannot be missed if you're a horror fan. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming by to watch and chat about the book. Very much looking forward to that new Magnus Archive Tangled in the Web thing coming, next quarter. And yeah, keep an eye out. And as usual, from us at the CU, we will see you later. Peace.